Welcome to Reddit Revenge Stories. Did you know over 90% of our viewers don't subscribe? If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. We're targeting 500 likes on this one. Let's dive into today's tale. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to share my life publicly. I'm a private person by nature, the type who keeps his head down, works hard, and does what needs to be done. But sometimes life throws you into a storm so intense, so devastating, that keeping it bottled up feels like it might tear you apart. This is my story. Not one of heroism or glory, but of betrayal, awakening, and ultimately revenge. The kind that doesn't break laws but breaks illusions. My name is Daniel Hart. I'm a 42-year-old structural engineer living in Raleigh, North Carolina. For over 18 years, I believed I was happily married to a woman I adored, someone I trusted with every fiber of my being. Her name is Natalie. We met in college. Me, a junior buried in physics textbooks, her a sophomore majoring in communications with a laugh that could light up a room. She was charismatic, sharp, and beautiful, in a way that didn't scream for attention but always got it anyway. We got married 3 years after graduation. It was a small wedding, nothing flashy, just close friends, family, and a feeling that we were building something solid. I thought we had a strong partnership. We bought a house, raised a dog, and traveled when we could. I built my career while she bounced between marketing jobs and freelance gigs. I didn't mind that she earned less. That was never important to me. What mattered was that I loved her and believed we were in it together. Looking back now, the signs were probably always there. Subtle at first. A late night here, a canceled plan there. The way her phone suddenly became a permanent fixture in her hand. Her laughter at texts she wouldn't share. I told myself she was just busy, that her freelance work required constant connectivity. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. I trusted her. Completely. The unraveling began slowly. One evening, she was supposed to meet me at a company dinner. Something formal, the kind of event spouses usually attend. She texted me an hour before saying she wasn't feeling well. I brought her home some dessert, only to find her missing. Her car was gone, no explanation. I waited until she returned just after midnight, claiming she'd gone for a drive to clear her head. I wanted to believe her. I told myself she'd been stressed. We all need space sometimes, right? But my gut twisted in a way I couldn't ignore. 2 weeks later, she left her laptop open in the kitchen. That never happened. She was always cautious with her devices. I wasn't snooping, not at first. I was going to close it and plug it in. But a message popped up in the corner of the screen. A preview, just enough to read part of a sentence. Can't stop thinking about last night. My heart skipped. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But my hands moved on their own. I opened the messaging app. And there it was. A full thread of messages between her and a man named Owen. The kind of messages that leave no room for misunderstanding. He wasn't just some random fling. They had history. Months of it, maybe more. Photos, inside jokes, dates I thought she was spending with friends. She called him O, short for Owen, I guess, though it sounded like some nickname out of a cheap romance novel. He was charming in his texts, flirty, confident, and she lapped it up like she was starving for attention. What gutted me wasn't just the betrayal, it was how casual it all seemed for her. No guilt, no hesitation, like she was living a double life without even flinching. And here I was, the fool making coffee for her every morning, kissing her goodnight, thinking we were growing old together. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to process, to think. I made copies of everything, screenshots, backups, even a few recorded calls I later discovered on our home assistant device. I played the long game because I knew if I exploded too soon she'd lie, gaslight me, maybe even spin it into something that made me doubt myself. Instead, I played the role of the clueless husband, smiling, asking how her day was, cooking her favorite meals, all while documenting every piece of evidence I could find. I tracked patterns, when they met, where, how often. I found out Owen was a consultant who traveled frequently. They met during a workshop she claimed was for career networking. Fitting, I suppose. During that phase, I started working on a plan. Not a revenge plan in the dramatic, movie-style sense. Nothing illegal. I wasn't going to destroy their lives with violence or scandal. No, I wanted something cleaner, something that would leave a mark without leaving a mess. A plan that would dismantle the lies piece by piece and leave her standing in the ruins of the life she tried to live in secret. I started by quietly separating our finances. I had access to everything, and she never noticed when I changed the account routing for my direct deposits. I opened a private account under a trust name. I stopped contributing to our joint savings and began discreetly transferring assets. The house was in both our names, but most of the equity was paid from my earnings. I had documents. I made sure I could prove it all. Then I hired a private investigator, not because I needed more proof, but because I wanted a third-party record. I needed evidence that couldn't be refuted. He followed them twice, confirmed hotel meetings, and even got photos of them entering and exiting restaurants. That was enough. I wasn't planning to use the legal system yet, but if it came to that, I'd be ready. At work, I negotiated for a transfer to a branch office in another city, Charlotte. It was 2 hours away, but offered a leadership position and a bump in pay. I accepted it quietly, knowing it would play into my plan. All of this took about 4 months. During that time, Natalie continued her act, or maybe she genuinely thought she had me fooled. We even celebrated our anniversary in that period. I took her to the coast, rented a small beach house. She smiled for selfies, posted them online with captions like "My rock," "My love." It made me sick to see it, but I let it happen. The final trigger came on a Wednesday evening. She was supposed to meet me for dinner, but called to say she had a migraine. I told her to rest. Then I drove across town to a bistro where I knew Owen would be. She walked in 20 minutes later, dressed in the same coat she'd worn on our anniversary. I didn't approach them. I didn't cause a scene. I just watched, observed, and left. That night, I started packing a few essentials. Nothing too obvious. Just enough to make a smooth exit when the time came. I also scheduled the house appraisal under the guise of refinancing. She didn't question it. Said she trusted me to handle the boring money stuff. By then, I wasn't even angry anymore, just cold, detached. I realized I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I thought was real. But she was long gone, if she ever existed at all. Then came the morning of reckoning. I woke up early, made her coffee, and left it on the counter like always. Then I drove to our lawyer's office and submitted the first round of separation documents. No warning, no conversation. I included a letter detailing the evidence I had, written in plain, calm language. I didn't accuse. I just presented facts, dates, times, screenshots. When she got served later that afternoon, she called me 6 times in a row. I didn't answer. I waited. The next morning, she showed up at my office. Tears in her eyes, denial on her lips. Then came the excuses. The "it didn't mean anything" speech. The "we can fix this" plea. I listened quietly. Then I told her I wasn't interested in fixing what she broke with deliberate choices. I said I hoped Owen made her feel as special as I once did because that was all she had left now. And then I left her standing there, speechless. What she didn't know yet was that I'd already moved out that morning. My things were gone. My accounts were separated. My life had already taken a turn she couldn't undo. That was only the beginning. The rest. That's where things got interesting. You'd think walking away would have brought peace. It didn't. Not immediately. The silence that followed was thick, dense with memories, doubts, and that lingering question that every betrayed person asks themselves. How did I not see it sooner? I moved into a furnished apartment in Charlotte, closer to my new office. It wasn't anything special, just a one-bedroom space with beige walls and a view of the parking lot. But it was mine. Mine and nobody else's. The absence of Natalie was like fresh air. I could finally breathe, think, exist without the constant weight of pretending. At first, she called almost daily, then it was texts, long messages filled with guilt, sorrow, sometimes anger. She tried every angle: apology, manipulation, nostalgia. She reminded me of our dog, who had passed 2 years earlier, as if grief was a shared bandage that could mend betrayal. She even mailed a photo album to my office. Our best moments. she wrote on the note inside. I didn't respond. Not because I was bitter, but because I was done. I had nothing to say. I wasn't trying to win or make a point. I was executing the plan I had mapped out meticulously. That's what gave me strength, the control. She took my trust, but I still had my mind. The divorce proceedings began within weeks. She was shocked to learn I had already separated the finances, had copies of everything, and had the evidence so neatly prepared that her own lawyer reportedly told her not to fight it. That must have stung. The man she thought she had wrapped around her finger had outmaneuvered her quietly and legally. But here's where things got interesting. You see, Natalie wasn't just having an affair, she was building an illusion. One where I was the dull, distracted husband and Owen was the passionate, worldly man who understood her. It was a fantasy, a house built on sand, and when reality came knocking, that fantasy couldn't hold. I learned, through subtle means, that things weren't going well between her and Owen after the separation. Apparently, he wasn't thrilled about the idea of being a full-time partner. Casual flings and stolen moments are one thing. Divorces, asset divisions, and emotional baggage are another. He started pulling away, slowly at first, then abruptly. One of Natalie's old friends, Jessica, someone I'd always gotten along with, reached out to me. She said she wasn't trying to meddle but thought I deserved to know that Natalie was spiraling. According to her, Owen had ghosted Natalie after learning that she wouldn't be walking away from the divorce with much. No house, no financial support, and no status. She thought she was trading up. Instead, she got downgraded. Karma? Maybe. But I wasn't interested in watching her crumble. That wasn't the point. I wasn't seeking her misery. I was reclaiming my life. While she was busy mourning the fantasy, I focused on rebuilding. I poured myself into my work, hit the gym, and even started reconnecting with old friends. People I'd unintentionally distanced myself from during the marriage. I had always been loyal, but that loyalty had come at a price. Self-sacrifice, isolation, blindness. It was liberating, albeit quietly. No dramatic declarations, no social media announcements. Just a man, rediscovering his own identity piece by piece. But the revenge, yes, the true revenge, it wasn't in leaving or winning court battles. It was in what came next. One evening, I got a message from a contact I had kept from the investigator. A friend of his worked in corporate risk analysis and had access to some background information on Owen. I hadn't asked for it, but he sent it anyway. Thought you might find this interesting, the message read. Turns out, Owen wasn't exactly a man of integrity. He had a history of relationships overlapping with his business contacts, female clients mostly. Nothing that crossed legal lines, but enough to cause HR red flags in at least two companies. His LinkedIn showed a carefully crafted image. Motivational quotes, smiling headshots, fake humility. But behind it, a man who used charm as currency. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to expose him publicly, that would be beneath me. But I knew something about reputations. They're like glass. Easy to shatter if you know where to tap. I created a detailed anonymous report using publicly available information, all properly sourced and carefully worded. I submitted it through an ethics hotline tied to the consultancy Owen worked for. I didn't need to lie. Everything in that document was true. His inappropriate messaging, conflicts of interest, overlapping relationships. I even included a timeline that coincided with his relationship with Natalie, who had attended one of his client workshops. I never heard back, of course. These hotlines are anonymous for a reason. But 6 weeks later, Owen's name vanished from the consultancy's website. His LinkedIn went dark shortly after. Maybe he resigned. Maybe he was asked to leave. Either way, he faded into digital obscurity. Another self-styled coach whose mask slipped just enough to matter. Natalie reached out again around that time. Her messages had changed tone, less fiery, more lost. She asked if we could meet just to talk. I declined. Then she asked for advice. She said she didn't know who she was anymore, felt like she was floating. I gave her the only honest response I could. Maybe it's time you face yourself without a mirror made of lies. She didn't reply. A few months passed. I had settled fully into my new life. I bought a small home just outside the city. It wasn't grand, but it was mine, and every object in it held no shared history, only future potential. One Saturday morning, I was at a cafe reading when I saw Jessica again, the same friend of Natalie's who had warned me. She stopped by my table, smiled, and asked if she could sit. We talked, caught up. She admitted she had cut ties with Natalie too, saying she couldn't watch someone destroy everything and then play victim. Jessica was smart, funny, grounded, and, more importantly, she had seen me at my worst and never judged me for it. We started meeting now and then. Nothing serious at first, just friendly conversations over coffee. But something genuine was there. No games, no illusions. Eventually, I told her everything. Not just about the betrayal, but about the months of silence, the strategy, the cold planning. She listened, not with pity, but with quiet respect. She said, "You didn't burn her life down. You just stopped holding up the scaffolding she was using to pretend." That stuck with me. Natalie, from what I heard later, moved back in with her parents temporarily. Her freelancing dried up, partly due to the fallout with Owen and partly because her network had started thinning out. People talk, quietly, but they do. It's the state. Fantasy she had built, the life of glamour and forbidden excitement, had turned to dust. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just lived. One night, I opened that photo album she'd sent months ago. Page after page of smiles, vacations, holidays. But I didn't feel sadness. I felt relief. Relief that I was no longer trapped in a story someone else was scripting. My revenge was never about hurting her. It was about healing myself so completely that her memory no longer held power. I didn't burn bridges, I built new ones. And when you live in truth, you sleep better, breathe deeper, and walk lighter. I'm not the same man I was before the betrayal. In many ways, I'm better. Not harder, not colder, just wiser. And the quiet revenge I crafted? It wasn't just for me. It was a message to anyone who's ever been betrayed and thought their only option was to scream into the void. Sometimes, the loudest victory is the one that leaves your enemies in silence. Life can come full circle without warning. A year after I left Natalie, I stood in front of a mirror one morning and barely recognized the man staring back. Not in a bad way. I was leaner, sharper, clearer-eyed. But it wasn't just physical. It was something internal, like the fog had finally lifted after a long, suffocating storm. I hadn't just survived the betrayal. I'd evolved because of it. My career had taken off in ways I hadn't expected. The move to Charlotte turned out to be a blessing. I was now managing large-scale engineering projects, the kind I'd only dreamed of before. Without the weight of a toxic marriage, I had more bandwidth to focus on what mattered. And, as odd as it sounds, I was content. Jessica and I had grown close. We never rushed things. No grand romantic confessions, no dramatic declarations. Just two people sharing space, laughing, understanding each other in a way that felt safe. There was no pretense, no game. That alone made it rare. But even as my new life settled, I never forgot what I went through. Not because I was bitter, but because remembering kept me grounded. Reminded me never to ignore red flags, never to surrender my instincts in the name of love, and never again to build a life with someone who couldn't respect loyalty. Then came the moment I didn't expect. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. I opened it and immediately recognized the cursive strokes. It was Natalie. After all the silence, after nearly a year of no contact, she had written me a letter. It was 3 pages long. She started by saying she knew she had no right to reach out, that she wouldn't blame me for tearing the letter up. But she asked me to read it anyway. She said she had hit a kind of rock bottom. No job, few friends, and a shattered self-image. She admitted that what we had wasn't perfect, but that she had never stopped caring about me in her own way. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She said she didn't deserve it, but she did ask for one thing: honesty. She asked how I managed to walk away so cleanly, how I stayed composed, how I didn't rage or expose her. She confessed that she expected me to destroy her. "You were always calm," she wrote, "but I always feared the moment you wouldn't be." I didn't respond. I didn't feel the need to. That chapter was closed, but I understood what the letter was. It was a quiet attempt at closure, maybe even self-redemption. And while I didn't wish her well, I didn't wish her harm anymore either. I was neutral, emotionless, and in some ways that was the ultimate revenge. I had moved on. She hadn't. Weeks passed, and life resumed. Jessica and I started planning a trip overseas. Just something light. Italy, maybe Spain. We talked about renting a cottage, seeing the countryside. She had a way of turning simple things into experiences. Unlike Natalie, who always wanted flash and drama, Jessica was grounded in reality, in appreciation. One evening, while at dinner with a few colleagues, I noticed someone across the room staring. At first, I didn't recognize her. She had lost weight. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired. Older in a way not tied to age, but to life's bruises. It was Natalie. She approached hesitantly during dessert. I stood when she did, out of habit, out of some remnant of politeness. She said, "Hi, Daniel," like we were old friends. I nodded and said, "Natalie." She asked if we could talk sometime. I told her calmly, we already did, just not in the same room. She understood. She didn't push. She didn't plead. She just nodded and walked away. I sat back down and resumed my meal. My colleagues asked if she was someone I knew. I said, once, a long time ago. That was the last time I saw her. I think about what I would tell someone going through what I went through, and I realized it wouldn't be about catching the cheater or getting even. That's temporary. That burns fast and leaves you with ashes. The real power, the long-lasting kind, comes from reclaiming your life. The revenge isn't in screaming or exposing, it's in building something so strong that their absence becomes irrelevant. It's in refusing to let their betrayal define your worth. It's in the stillness of knowing you were loyal in a world full of selfishness. I used to think love was about sacrifice. It is to an extent. But real love doesn't ask you to dim your light or silence your doubts. It doesn't thrive in secrecy or confusion. It breathes in clarity, in honesty, and mutual respect. Natalie never gave me that, but she gave me something else. A harsh, necessary awakening. I don't wear the betrayal like a scar, I wear it like armor. Not to keep people out, but to keep myself protected. To never again invest in someone who doesn't value integrity above excitement. Passion fades, trust doesn't. A year and a half after I left my marriage, I stood beside Jessica on a mountaintop in Asheville. We had hiked all morning. She stood there, breathless, smiling at the view. And I realized I wasn't just over Natalie. I had been reborn. Not into someone new, but into someone I should have always been. A man who doesn't settle for half-truths. A man who won't play supporting actor in someone else's delusion. Some stories end with explosions. Mine ended with peace. I suppose, in the end, Natalie's greatest punishment wasn't what I did. It was what I didn't do. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't drag her name through the mud. I let her watch me walk away with my dignity intact, while everything she built on deceit crumbled beneath her. And that, more than anything, was the revenge that echoed. Because in silence, she had to sit with the truth. I was the best thing that ever happened to her, and the one thing she could never replace.